Greetings and welcome. I've been teasing this lesson over on this YouTube channel for a little while now, and today we're actually going to paint it. Admittedly, this is a little, you can't see anything, it's so reflective. Admittedly, this piece is a little bit out of my comfort zone. I generally don't do a lot of morning scenes, and they were a little intimidating to me until I did this piece. I spent a lot of time on it. I think it's actually like a 2-hour lesson, something close to that. But by the end of it, I feel like I had a great grasp on it. I really figured it out. So it's a different painting, but it's one where I feel like I've learned a lot in, and I hope you do too. As per usual, there is a digital sketch up over on Patreon along with the full hour-long lesson and all of the hour-long lessons for these as well. They're over 35 now, so you can go and check them out. There are 2 new ones added to the $4 level every month. There are 4 new ones added to the $8 level each month, and they're digital sketches for all of them. They never go away, so go check those out if you're interested. All of that said, let's jump into today's cut-up lesson of the hour-long. I never know what to call these. Anyways, let's jump into it. We're going to begin here today with a larger square-headed brush. I'm going to dip the tip of it in water to ensure that it is damp, and so that I can drag my paint out a little bit farther. Then I'm grabbing a good amount of titanium white paint, and I'm applying this to the entirety of my sky, as you can see here. Then I'm going to go back to my water dish, grab a little bit more water, some additional titanium white, and just continue that process. Now, I'm going to go back to my palette. I'm going to grab some of our primary yellow here. I'm going to grab a little bit of our primary red, mix those together until we get a little bit of a warmer yellow, as you can see. And then I'm going to apply that to the bottom of my sky and blend it upwards. Now I'm going to go around the middle of the sky. I'm going to introduce a little bit more of that primary yellow. I want it to be the warmest at the base of the horizon, and then as we move up here, it's going to get a little bit less so. Now, as you can see, that area in the middle rivaled that area brightness saturation wise, where we want it to get a little bit brighter as we move up. So what I'm going to do here is take some additional titanium white, throw that in there, and just do a little problem solving. Now at the top here, I want it to be more of a blue sky, and I want it to transition down into the yellow. But if I were to add a blue there and just kind of blend it in a gradient, I'd get more of a green. And I don't want a green, I want more of a pink. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my primary blue, what I would apply to the top there. I'm going to take a little bit of primary red and mix that in there. The two are going to mix to make more of a purple, and a purple is going to blend much better with a yellow than a blue would. So I'm just working on a nice purple here on my palette, and then of course this is very dark in comparison, so we're going to take a lot of titanium white, mix up a nice new mixture over here. We have our blue/violet on our brush. We can grab a little bit more too. Throw that in there. And now we'll apply that to the top. I'm going to take my smaller round-headed brush here. I'm going to take some primary red, move that down on my palette, grab a good amount of titanium white. This is going to thicken the pigment, and it's going to turn it into a pink. And I want some pink clouds in my painting. So now, I'm going to start over on the left-hand side. And as you can see, this pink, saturation-wise, in comparison to everything else, is hyper saturated. Everything's kind of muted because it blended with the white. This is not, and it's important that you kind of keep everything in check. So I'm going to grab some additional titanium white and mix that in there. Now I'm going to start moving these clouds up in that sort of direction, kind of mirroring my clouds. I'm trying to create a duality. I'm trying to create a movement in the sky. I want it to be fairly natural. So while you may be working from a sketch, feel free to change it as you go and just be intuitive. Now if you want parts of your clouds to be a little bit brighter than others, you can take more of our titanium white, mix that in with our previous mixture till you get a brighter mixture. Then you can go along the edges that you think will be slightly brighter, which will be catching more light than the others. This will build depth. Here I'm just kind of placing it around the tops of my clouds. The bottoms of the clouds are going to be a little bit darker because not as much light can get through them, and the light's kind of higher up in the sky. Now we're going to work on a rainbow sprawling just like this, taking you from one side of the sky to the other. I'm going to take my smaller round-headed brush, dip that in water so that it's fairly damp. Then I'm going to come over to my palette, take a little bit of red, take about an equal mixture of titanium white, mix that up here, and then I want to thin my pigment greatly. So I'm going to grab a lot more water and incorporate that. As you can see, it's now more liquid than paint. And I'm going to take this, going to steady my hand with my pinky on my easel, and then I'm going to create an arch. Going to work through my clouds because it's a pink and we have pink clouds, so it's fairly easy right now. Just going to draw the outline for the top of my rainbow. Now we're going to move into the next color, which is normally orange. So we'll take some primary yellow, good amount, tiny bit of primary red. Primary yellow is a much stronger pigment than primary red. So if you want an equal orange, you need to use a lot more yellow than red. Yet again, we're going to get a good amount of water, thin this out, and now right below that initial reddish pink application, I'm going to throw in some orange, this time working my way around the clouds because they aren't the same color. Going to grab a medium-sized square-headed brush, dip that in some water here. Going to go to my palette, grab a little bit of our primary blue, a little bit of our primary red, and now for the first time in this painting, a hint of Mars black and some titanium white. The Mars black and the titanium white are going to mix to make a gray, and we're going to get a little bit of a warmer bluish purple because we added the red in with the large amount of blue. There, you can see it right there. And I'm going to use this initially to create the base of my mountains in the backdrop. Before we jump back into this, look at the titanium white here. It has a lot of different pigments in it right now, and that means if we go to apply our brush to it, we're not going to get a pure titanium white, which is an issue because we'll be getting all of these other colors, which we don't want. So I'm going to add some additional titanium white to my palette and work with that rather than this diluted titanium white. So now we're going to take our larger square-headed brush, dip that in some water here, go to my palette, grab this pure titanium white, and apply this to where we're going to apply our water. We're just going to grab some primary yellow. We're going to grab a tiny bit of primary red because the primary yellow is much stronger. Make it slightly warm, as you can see here. Grab some titanium white to thicken it, to brighten it. Then we're going to apply that at the base of our horizon, as you can see here. Now, going to go back to my palette, and I'm going to mix more of this blue that we used initially for the sky. I'm going to apply that to our base, and we're going to blend upwards. If we lose the detail from the reflection of the cloud, that's okay. There you saw I had a little bit of extra blue on my brush, a little bit too much, and it came off in these other areas. We can blend it out, and it's quite alright, but it's something to be mindful of when you're painting. I actually, now that I'm looking at it, want to do a little bit more with the rainbow. I'm going to take some primary yellow, some titanium white, mix those two up, grab some water. Water is pretty yellow, so we know it won't distort the color, which is nice. And I'm just going to extend to this side of the rainbow. I'm not going to do it in the same order of color that I did before, just because the rainbow is getting very small at this point and we're not going to see all of those colors. I think I'm going to grab the purple that we used at the bottom, just because it's such a darker and definitive color. It'll be really good for illustrating that it's moving down. But yet again, we want it to be extremely transparent. So there's so much water on my brush right now. Grounding my hand on the canvas. Continuing our rainbow downwards. Now, yet again, I find myself drawn back to the sky, so I'm going to take my smaller round-headed brush, my primary red, some titanium white, as you can see there. I'm just going to fill in some more clouds. I'm really loving these pink clouds, and I think they add this great color to the piece, and I just want to continue playing with them a little bit more. Big ones, small ones, clusters, chunks, line work, all of it. Very transparent clouds, very opaque clouds, you name it. We're going to take an older square-headed brush. This is one where the bristles kind of leaf off in varying directions, so when you make a tapping motion with it, you get a bunch of implications on the canvas, much smaller than you would be able to make with a regular brush, and you can make one of these very simply by taking a regular square-headed brush like this, and just peeling back the bristles. So, with that said, now I'm going to begin working on the foliage here in the foreground. I'm going to grab some primary yellow, going to grab some primary blue, going to mix those up here on the palette, grab a little bit of Mars black, and a little bit of titanium white. Using the Mars black and the titanium white to desaturate the pigment, as I don't want the foliage from these trees taking away from the beautiful sunset in the sky. Now this is a fairly light application, and I'm applying this here on the edges because I want the edges to look illuminated, like a lot of light is passing through them, and so they'll be much brighter. As we get farther and farther back in the painting, our foliage will get darker and darker. I'm going to take some additional primary yellow, primary blue, Mars black, and I'm going to work my way inwards with our foliage. So I'm going to go along that edge, but I'm going to try to allow the real edge to be a bit brighter. As we get farther and farther back, again, we want it to dissipate in light and saturation and get darker and darker. So I'm going to move down to the grass area. I'm going to create some duality in the painting. The grass is going to move in this way, it's going to mirror the top area, and I'm going to use a very similar color set. So here we have some primary yellow, primary blue, Mars black. I'm going to create the base layer of our grass here, so it's going to be fairly dark. And I'm going to drag my brush and allow it to leaf upwards as I get towards the tops of the grass. So I get all of these little bristles making individual strokes. We're going to begin working on our actual trees, on the bark and on the structure. So I'm going to take my medium-sized square-headed brush, I'm going to take some burnt, I'm going to take some Mars black. I generally start with burnt umber and Mars black, but we're working on birch trees today, and I want there to be a dark black base. So here on our birch trees, I'm just using this Mars black. I'm using this medium-sized square-headed brush because it does have that nice sharp edge. I'm working initially on the edges of these trunks, and then I'll blend inwards, as you can see here. And I'll do this until I have the entirety of our trees drawn in. Going to switch to my medium-sized square-headed brush, grab some titanium white paint, and turn these into birch trees. So I'm going to go to the edge, going to drag backwards. There we go. The more wet your tree still is, the more it'll blend into a gray. The more dry it is, the more you'll get a pure white. We're starting on this edge because it's going to be receiving a lot of light and the back of the tree isn't going to have as much light. Then I'm going to go re-over the edges with more titanium white because acrylic paints are innately fairly transparent, and when we apply that first layer, we're going to see some of that black show through. And we want it to around the middle and the end of the blend, but not at the start. Upon evaluating, I realized that I really like the painting, and something that stands out to me is this color right here. And I wanted a little bit more of it, and I want it in the foreground. So I think we're going to put a couple little flowers here in the foreground. So I'm going to begin with my smaller round-headed brush. I'm going to get some of our primary yellow. As you can see here, it's very thin. Going to grab some titanium white, thicken it up a little bit. Look at the color in relation to what I have on the sky. I like that a lot. And I'm just going to dab on a couple little flowers down here. It's going to make the painting again so much more cohesive and just have it blend in so well. Upon examining the piece, I decided that I actually want to work a little sun in here. So I'm going to take the smaller round-headed brush, some of our titanium white, a little bit of our primary yellow, but predominantly titanium white. I just want to tint it a little bit. And then I'm going to throw this very much in the middle of my rainbow. I'm going to apply it around some clouds here. That way it looks like the clouds are overlapping it, and we get this really neat effect depth-wise. Then, taking that smaller round-headed brush, I'm going to work in horizontal strokes and just create a little bit of a highlight. It's going to work its way down in through the water. Hey there, it's Ryan O'Rourke. I truly hope you enjoyed today's little extra video. It was essentially a cut-up version of one of the many hour-long lessons which we offer over on patreon.com. Over there you'll also find digital sketches of the 10-minute painting lessons, digital sketches of these hour-long painting lessons, and a bunch of reference photos as well. So if any of that interests you, or if you just want to support the channel, go over there and check it out. It is a pleasure to make these long form videos, and I love to share them with all of you. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you next Saturday with a new video, and above all, as always, stay creative.